So as promised, here are the projects from the course. Okay, so I supplied you with perspective lines, and you were required to have your project fit inside, fit inside those perspective lines. As you can see, this student clearly followed quite nicely. And I also supplied you with template people, and you were required to have your person either that size or bigger, that size, for your person in parts. And you were also required to have these people be able to walk inside the doors of your building. And these were the required sizes if you did put people in these places. There's the door site. So here's a perfectly balanced student image for this project. So let me show you what other students have done. I'll start almost in the order they were submitted, so it's not any particular order in particular. So this one's very cool the way they added the parts, but some of the adjustments would have helped this be a little bit more clear. Like I added some adjustments to it just to colorize it. Added sort of a more creative background just to sort of give you the idea that you can sort of regulate the idea of depth, and then I put that person there just to show that they can walk through the room. So I needed those template people in order to mark, to ensure that things worked in the rooms. Now you can see this man is far too tall. He should have been somewhere along these lines. They maintained a black and white thing going on there, and again that should have been done as colorizing it, and it would have been much better. But again, creative, some ideas in there, very good. Yeah, so some of you forgot the part about the person. So this person should have been in here, but then you get marks taken off because when you do that, you'll notice that when I zoom in, everything's pixelated, and part of the mark was to see if you could do a beautiful seamed in monster where everything is working. So that was important. So when you submit them like this, you did get marks taken off, but this was really well done. But again, they didn't bring the foreground forward. You can see here that I sort of brought it more forward, which makes the foreground slide. So whenever that happens, you just have to open up your perspective lines. Now they should have opened this door because inside here there was a lot of creative stuff happening behind the door that you guys can't see. But again, I mark those things and I add them as part of your mark when you do that. So this one's very creative, had a lot of stuff going on, but the car is too small. The car should be at least this big. So when you're not sure the size of something, find it online and see how tall is a person when they're next to a car. And then the perspective was a little wonky inside, so that it should have been a little bit smaller and lower inside. But other than that, there was some really creative stuff. And again, when I removed the car, there was other stuff behind, which was great. So good. A little bit of a perspective problem here, a little bit of a distortion. And again, your images should be crisp. So even though you think that's a deadly image to use, don't use it if it's not crisp, because it actually ends up making you lose marks in the end. There were not many changes, but I was able to de-warpathize it a little bit and lower it, add your little shadow under here. But again, another very creative project. Another student that forgot about the foreground. Probably curbs would have worked out better than these weird sort of floating sidewalks, but again, she should have been in the foreground for the person in parts. Scale. I didn't even fix this one. I just put the scale person, so you can see how ridiculously large this baby is. So really important that you scale things. Like you can say, oh, well, in this world there's a large baby. Well, no, this is a Photoshop project, and I don't know whether you're actually doing this on purpose. And if you are, you write that in the explanation you give me, so I don't think that you think that's to scale. And again, this is not in parts. All he has is a little warped hand. So if you forgot to put the person in parts in the foreground, you were deducted by those marks. So this is very creative, the purse people, the rain, a little bit of a skewy sort of sense of depth, a little bit too far away in the background, but some nice photoshopping going on. The blue part shows me the parts that you didn't add. So this student has kind of like a tilted landscape, and they forgot to do the road in the foreground. So I detilted it and made the phone booth a proper size for a human to enter it, but you know, and to scale, this should have been much larger. just to show you what was required. And again, missing road, you get deductions for stuff that miss. So this one was really creative. I couldn't believe how cool this bean they did in the background, but they completely neglected the part that I need to be able to see it, like not super pixelated in the background. This one was surprisingly clear in comparison to other ones, so I was able to assess what they did. I put it in the foreground, just stretching it, and put a little bit of a filter. But again, few of the problems. How big this man is. He's way too tall. And you can't be that tall and then that little, so really skewy. So you remember to use a template, people. That'll help you scale things properly. And then put your person in the foreground. So this one was really cleanly done, really beautifully done. No complaints about that. And again, you have to realize that some of you put one big piece that you steal from an image, and other ones piece these together, and so those things you're not seeing because I'm not giving it to you. But you know, this one here, for example, really beautifully done. All these little bits and pieces, stuff inside the windows, really nicely done image. Super pleased with this one, with all the additions they did. But then again, this person in parts was merged, so I have no idea whether or not they did it or not. Even though you have the parts in the originals, you still could have found that on a Photoshop file and pretended you put it together. I actually have to have it in parts, so you can't just assume that I will assume you did it with all the stuff that's available online. So make sure that you do give it to me in parts. Again, another one that missed a whole chunk of the image without doing the work. Really skewy. I just took the same image and flipped it downwards. Did a little bit of contrast correcting, sort of helped this whole thing look so much more realistic. And then again, no person in parts. Another one really well done, really creative the way they did this little thing at the bottom. She was too small. She should have been a bit larger, but again, nicely done. This one shrunk the image, so again, when I'm looking at it, the sharpness of it, that's part of the problem. So when you're saying, Mo, you know, look at this great cat I added, well, I can't really know how well done it is, and the edges, you know, are not that clear, etc., etc. You need to keep it the size I gave you. And again, wasn't too sure about these strange filters they put on it. All it did was murky it up when, you know, in reality, this is what the images look like before you put those weird murky images on top, and I'm not sure whether that added, that added anything to it. So make sure you know, good thing they did it in adjustments, because I was able to see the clarity of the images underneath. This one was really creative, all the layers they did to create this store. This doesn't make sense, not sure what those things are. So again, you won't get full marks when things are kind of wonky, but and then the shadow needs to lay sideways. It's a little bit off, but still very creatively done. This student offered me two alternatives, one in the darkness, one in the lightness, one with a lady smaller the way they liked it, one with a lady larger the way I wanted it. Super creative. So if you want, yeah, do that. You know, she added or he added the stuff and did a beautiful job. Really nicely done. Did this waterfall coming out of this pipe that they created out of parts, and yeah, really nicely done. You can see it a little bit clearer there. Wonderfully done. This looks so real and so nice, you know, with this. But again, this person isn't in parts. It's just this person they found online like that. Like the whole idea and the realism in it, but again, a little bit more in the foreground. And their person in parts was this raccoon. But as you can see, you know, when you look at it up close, it starts having a lot of problems on it. This little guy in parts was supposed to be huge and in the foreground. So when you do that, that affects your mark. But again, nicely done. Another one that missed the part about having a person in parts. Some perspective issues, some realism issues where you're using really damaged images for stuff. So got to pay attention to that. Another one, person in parts, there were yeah, really skewy things like that. More images. This is one big image stuck on one side. Those kinds of things you have to really watch for. So lots of additions here, lots of stuff in parts. Really spent a lot of time trying to put additions everywhere and put a person in parts in the foreground, so good. Really love this one. This one was great. I wish it had more things in it, and I wish more of it were in parts, like instead of using the window that it came with, do your own window thing, but really creative. Nice sense of color and depth. Another one really nicely done. Reflections are completely up and down. They're not at an angle, so they have to go continue, but it was still really nicely done. Dressed up this lady in this outfit, put the little see-through wings, little witch in the background. Nicely done. This one, that's how much of the image was not covered. Yeah, really cool once you see it with the additions I had, but needed to have all those parts covered, and yeah, lots of stuff missing on it. We looked at that one already. Another one that forgot to do the road, that would have helped the project for Marks. Another one that didn't do the road and kind of looks like they ran out of time, so missed lots of stuff. This one doesn't have a person in the foreground, but lots of tiny additions done in this one, but again, very tiny, so when you're assessing it, they're hard to see when they're that tiny. So you look at that and you go, okay, if that car were in the foreground the way it was supposed to be, you'd realize that all these problems would look pretty scary when they're up close. So you have to sort of factor that in when you're realizing that's why I want them in the foreground. This one's nicely done. Probably could have gotten a little bit more clarity in the images in the you know, the lady washing the clothes and stuff, but you know, nice stuff. But again, perspective is at an angle and could have been fixed a little bit. This is another really nicely done, lots of parts. This is the way they turned it in, and then behind that lady's outfit she had all these little bugs and stuff, which was kind of funny when I found them under her. But yeah, I just moved them out and then made her a little bit bigger and darkened it a little bit just to show the quality of light, because you were supposed to have some kind of a idea of a glow of light, and so by darkening it you're able to see it a little bit better. So that was that one, and that's the whole class. So not sure why, I'm missing about 7 projects in this class. Didn't hear from any students of where they are, but anyway, I'm an email away, and hope you enjoyed the course. I really enjoyed all of your projects.